I'm Dave Kammerman, and you are watching PAA Game Day.
Welcome, the host of PAA Game Day and a public address announcer for Syracuse University and Colgate University, as well as the New York State Public High School Athletic Association for numerous championships, Tom Winneke.
So welcome everybody back to PAA Game Day, the podcast, where we bring you behind the mic to the voices that you hear, but you rarely get to know. I'm your host, Tom Winneke, and today's guest is someone whose journey from law enforcement to professional sports public address announcing is anything but ordinary. He's been behind the mic for the Cleveland Charge of the NBA's G League, the Lake County Captains in high single A ball, the Akron RubberDucks in AA baseball, and the Cleveland Monsters for the American Hockey League. And yes, he's even called games from the stands. So please welcome the man with the hat himself, Dave Kammerman.
Hi, Tom. Good to be here. I'm very excited to be here.
This is going to be a treat. This is going to be a treat for all of us. So Dave, let's jump right in. You've spent 25 years on the Berea, Ohio police force. Now that's a full career in itself. I mean, from patrol officer to a bomb tech on the bomb squad to a school resource officer. That's beyond impressive. So Dave, the obvious first question is, how did you make the leap from law enforcement to public address announcing?
You know, when I say it out loud or write it down, it doesn't seem real. There's a college that's in my town, Baldwin Wallace University. And, I've worked closely with coaches and stuff through the years, if we had issues or this or that. And there was a head coach for the football team. He had retired from coaching. He was now an assistant. He worked as the sports, I forget what it's called right now, but he was the interim AD, athletic director, sorry. Okay. And he would walk over on Friday nights to watch the high school football games that played in the BW Stadium a lot of times, and I would work it as a police officer. And we just would have conversations, stand in the end zone, watching the game, watching the fans. We'd have conversations all the time about it. And I had mentioned one time how I had filled in when I was in college at Miami University years and years ago, one time for PA doing a hockey game. And we had joked about it. And I've been in band since I was a kid. So I'm not a stranger to performing or the microphone. And so he came to me one time and he's like, were you serious about doing that PA stuff? Because our games are kind of like mortuaries. And I'm like, let's give it a shot. And it was funny because it was around COVID. So there wasn't a whole lot of people allowed in at all. But we wanted to do something to make it a little fun. So I came in, I brought my little Chromebook. I added starting lineup music, and it became exciting. And the parents that were allowed to come, that had to sit amongst the cardboard cutouts behind me, they enjoyed it. The coaches enjoyed it. The players enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it. I love sports. I always have. And it was fun. And it became something. It became something of a great thing that made the games different than they were before, that people enjoyed coming.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a really neat way to get started, where you really weren't planning on getting started.
Not at all.
But it just kind of fell into your lap. And now, in the introduction, we talked about the professional teams that you're working with, the Monsters from the American Hockey League. Even though you're a backup, you're still trusted at a moment's notice to step in and do a really good job. Working in high single A baseball, and then with Akron in AA baseball, to the NBA's G League. Would you say that you're kind of working your way up the ladder like the players are? Any thoughts of maybe working at the highest level?
Absolutely. Now that I've retired from the police department and I've been doing this now, I'll be starting my 4th season with the Cleveland Charge. And it is something that I would like to do. I would like to take it to the highest level. I think it's pretty evident. I love doing it. I've never had a game, and I've said this before. I've never been halfway through any game I've ever done, and man, I wish this game was over. That's how I know that I'm doing the right thing, because it's just
Absolutely.
exciting for me. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, you're known as the man with a hat. Now, there has to be a great story in there somewhere
Well, it
about the
started
man with a
off.
hat.
Absolutely. It started off by accident. I would wear a hat, and at Baldwin Wallace, they do a lot of drawings and stuff like that, and I'd read the ticket, and I'm like, all right, if you're the winner, come see the man in the hat. And that became something, wasn't a big deal. I didn't think much about it. Then I got the job with the Cleveland Charge. And before every game, we have a team meal and everything. And Rocco, who was our COO at the time, he needed a marker for something. He was sitting at a different table, and I always carry my credentials, and I have a marker and a pen. I always have everything with me. Well, was eating, so I had my hat off, my glasses off, and I'm sitting. I hear him, so I walk up and I hand him the marker, and he looks at me, and I just hand it to him. I walk away. Then I hear him start to chuckle, and he goes, "Dave, I had no idea who you were without that hat on." So
That's
the
perfect.
hat has stayed ever since. And, I have a different hat for different occasions. I have a derby for big games, and I change different hats now. I have different colors, bands that I change out. And
Jeez.
it's just become part of the persona of Dave, the PA guy.
Now, talk about a little bit about your journey up to where you are now with the G League. How you've grown as a public address announcer to that college kid who just did a hockey game on a whim, to those first games at Baldwin Wallace during COVID, where you were kind of writing your own script, to where you are now. How have you grown and progressed all over that time?
Well, I didn't do it on my own, obviously. When I started at BW, and I had been doing it for about a year, when I saw it was on LinkedIn, actually, just an ad that the Charge were looking for a PA announcer for the rest of their season. And I'm like, we'll see what happens. I enjoy doing this, right? Well, so I got to do a video interview just like we're doing right now. And then they said, we're going to take the top 6 and we're going to audition at Rocket Fieldhouse, or it was Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse at the time. It's now Rocket Arena. Got to say Rocket Arena. And I'm sitting there in the perch, hearing my voice boom through this arena. And I'm like, this is so cool. Even if I don't get it, this was awesome. But I ended up getting the gig. They called me, I'm your man. And now the guy that was in the interim was a PA announcer by the name of Jason Sokol. Now, Jason he's the PA guy full-time for the Monsters. He's been around the Cleveland area doing, games for a long time. And so I followed him, like a game. They let me sit with him, and he kind of showed me, because there's a lot more in the professional game. Like, you're right, at Baldwin Wallace, I was kind of doing my own thing and figuring out how it goes. And I was my own producer. I was my own PA announcer. I did everything, the music. Well, I had my gig to do, with the Charge. This is how it goes. The producer's going to call you on this. This is what you got to do. And he really helped me become more professional. He was really a mentor, and he's a good guy. We talk all the time. I was just talking to him tonight, and I couldn't be where I am now, because I didn't go to school for this. I'm a loudmouth. I'm a loudmouth cop that loves sports, that can talk into a microphone. He showed me how to hone it in, and this is what you gotta, you have to be able to get this across. You have to be able to pay attention to this. And because there are different things, especially at the professional level, that I've learned. And then it turns out they had me follow him with the Monsters. I sat in
Yeah.
several games with him and learned how they do it, because everyone has their own style as far as producing and this and that. And that's a lot different, because there I've got a headset on where I've got people yakking in my ear the whole time. They're directing things, and at the same time I have to do this read. So it's different for each individual sport. But Jason seemed to have been there, for me and with me at each level.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, when the job with the Lake County Captains 2 summers ago, I didn't go looking for that job. I got a text that said, "Hey, Dave, I want to talk to you about your availability for the Captains this summer." And I knew Jason was their PA guy, so I immediately texted him because I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. And I'm like, "Hey, Jason, I just got this really weird text." And he goes, "Well, they don't waste any time. I just got off the phone with them 20 minutes ago, told them I was stepping down, and they called you." And Jason and I, worked together, and then it was really kind of gratifying this past summer while I was doing the Akron RubberDucks. I was on field hosting when they were out of town for the Lake Erie Crushers, and they ran into a PA problem where they had all their guys out, and I was able to
Mhm.
get a hold of Jason. So I got to work with Jason for once, which was very cool to be able to work with him instead of, just following or that. So it was great.
Oh, now, yeah, that's fantastic stuff. Now, talk about a little bit where we said you when you were at Baldwin Wallace and you were kind of writing your own script and figuring it out as you went, and then you got to the professional ranks in the American Hockey League, and they say, "This is what you should do. This is what you should say now."
Mhm.
Give us an example of something that came up in the American Hockey League in professional hockey that you weren't aware of that, okay, now I've got to really pay attention and I may have to do 2 or 3 things at once now.
Well, at Baldwin Wallace, they had scripts for me,
Mhm.
however, again, I handled all the music. I handled, um, you know, the ads, everything when it was, okay, I'm going to do
Mhm.
it this time. I'm going to do it this time. Well, with the AHL and hockey, everything is timed to the split second.
Okay.
We're running this ad on the Jumbotron right now. Have this ready. There are reads that you need to have ready in case we have a
Mhm.
timeout that we're not expecting. In the meantime, they're directing, and I still have all that going on in here. I can hear what they're
Mhm.
doing because it's not just me. Not with that, I have to be able to discern everything that's going on while listening to all that. So I've had to learn to shut out some things and be able to listen. Okay, they're
Okay.
talking to me now. Here we go. It's time to do this. There's a lot more pieces to it as opposed to me at Baldwin Wallace handling everything. There's so much that goes into the game presentation and everything that I have to pay attention to now, that it's not just whenever I want to do it.
Mhm. And it's all put together so the person up in the upper deck enjoying his beer watching the hockey game doesn't notice that there's 13 things going on at
It's
once.
seamless.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Now, talk about baseball a little bit. You said you've worked as an on-field host and as a public address announcer, and we talked a little bit about this beforehand, how that gave you a little bit of a different perspective on your PA work, what the PA needs from the on-field host, what the on-field host might need from the public address announcer. Speak to that a little bit in more detail for us.
So, like I said, this past summer, I was the PA announcer for the Akron RubberDucks, which is the AA affiliate of the Cleveland Guardians. And when they were out of town, I did the on-field hosting for the Lake Erie Crushers, which are they're part of the Frontier League. It's an independent league, and it was awesome. I'm not I don't know if you've noticed, I'm not a typical PA guy. I enjoy interacting with the fans. I even at Akron, I would, when we have t-shirt tosses, I'm out the window throwing shirts to fans and doing stuff like that. But what was awesome, being on the field as the host, knowing that I have exactly a minute and 50 seconds in between innings, okay, and I have to get this done. I know from my PA, I need that, if he's got a reading into it, I need that read really fast, because you've got to throw it down quickly because I have this amount of time that I have to be off the field. And it helped me because I knew then when I was throwing it down as the PA, I'd be like, "All right, down to you, Kyle." I'd get it off. So he had that time because the focus is on him at that point, with whatever promotion they had going on. So it was very good, as a PA, knowing that, oh, this is what he needs, and then as a host, knowing, oh, okay, I'm going to remember that when I'm PAing next. That, yeah, I didn't have enough time for that.
Yeah, sort of to make you realize some maybe the hard way that we're all part of a team and it isn't just us doing our thing. Somebody else is depending on us to do our job so they can do theirs.
Correct. I don't think that the average fan realizes how much is going on. Like you said, the guy sitting up in the upper deck, watching the game, how much is going
Oh
on
yeah.
all at one time so
Hmm.
that he has a seamless, game. Oh, interactions in between, when there's timeouts.
Yeah.
There's so many moving parts. It's hectic, but exciting and fun all at the same time.
Oh, exactly. Now, we talked about you doing public address from the stands before. Now, maybe channeling a little bit of your inner Harry Carey a bit here. You're not from the booth, but you're right in with the fans. How did that come about? What's that experience like compared to the usual prep for being in the booth?
Well, it came from necessity originally because at the end, if you know anything about minor league baseball, most of it is always make the joke. Minor league baseball is run on duct tape and interns, and most of the interns are college kids, and they go back toward the end of the summer. A lot of them leave, so we were running short on staff,
Oh,
and our
okay.
regular hosts weren't. And we had joked about, hey, maybe I'll PA and host, and so it kind of came out of necessity. But we're like, let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it's a failure, we won't go back to it. But I had a handheld wireless mic, and I had my clipboard, and I just find an empty seat in the section and sit down, down to bat, number 30, Ralphie Velasquez. And the fans are like, hey, Dave. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? And it was, I said, like, now the most fun part about it was when, I knew that I had, like, all right, we're gonna throw it down to Dave at third base, and then the camera coming up, I'm like, "Hey, it's Dave at third base." So I, threw it to myself, and like I said, the fans loved it. It was so much fun and absolutely exhausting all at the same time because I have to pay attention to the game. I need to know, we have the first foul ball of every half inning is sponsored by someone. So okay, was that the first foul ball? All right. So I'm paying attention to the game. Also have to know where I need to be in between innings. All right, now I got to be on the first base side because we're going over for this, and we're going to be, out in foul territory. So there's so much that goes into it. But again, it's, the fans loved it because, I'm like I said, I could sit there and we talk in between batters. I'm like, oh, did you see that? Oh, that was so close. And they like that private, that personal connection, that the personal connection that the fans get to, hey, it's Dave. I've always got my jersey number 25 because that was my badge number. People will go,
Okay.
is that because it's 2025? I'm like, no, that was my badge number. So I always wear the number 25. And it said, Dave, like, hey, there's Dave. So all my jerseys were the same, and people got to know me, and it became a thing. And it's something I'd like to do more, but it's not an every night thing.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like
No,
it's a special event thing. Well,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a minute. Well, folks, we're back here on PA Game Day, the podcast, with our guest, Dave Kammerman. And let's jump right back into things, Dave. You're working mainly in a professional sports setting where, again, we talked a little bit about this before today, that this is entertainment, first and foremost. Folks are there to be entertained. Yes, they're passionate about their teams, but they're there to be entertained. Talk about that, if you will, how you fit that expectation without making it sound fake or stepping on the action of the game.
Well, I'm very passionate about sports. I'm an X's and O's guy. I went to Friday night football when I was in high school because I like football. It wasn't a social, thing for me. I love football. I love the sports. But again, nowadays there's an entertainment factor. It's not cheap to take a family to a game. Um, and I understand that. I get that. People want to be entertained. They want to have that personal connection. So when I'm working for a team, or I'm very competitive all the time. So my excitement for it and my rah is genuine, and I think that bleeds through, and I think that people can feel that and they like that, and I know, it's different in college. College, you have to be a little more straightforward, a little more neutral. But at the pro levels, I try, and I have different things that I've done that I've actually heard from other teams that thought it was funny. There was a call I disagreed with, and the next batter that came up from the other team, I'm like, up to bat number 23, John Smith. Just like that. And the crowd kind of chuckles and laughs. And I was on the field because in minor league ball, you play the same team for 6 days straight.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the field before the game the next day, and one of the coaches, managers from the other team, comes up to me and goes, "You're the PA guy, right?" I'm going, because our guys were laughing so hard, like when you get exasperated. He goes, so they get it, and they understand it, and I try not to pull that one out too much, because then you lose the effect of it. But it's genuine, believe me. You can tell when I'm perturbed.
I bet they can. Now, along that lines of having fun, you and I had some fun with tongue twisters that we posted on publicaddressannouncer.org. And folks, what we did was we would post a video of me reading a tongue twister, trying to be as clear and as quick as I could do it. And I was the PA guy. That was my moniker for this deal. And then we invited people that saw it to send in tapes that they could do it faster or clearer than I did. And Dave, to his credit, accepted that challenge many times, and quite frankly, folks, he just blew me out of the water. He just torched me. So we had a lot of fun with that. So Dave, besides having some fun with those things, how important are those type of voice exercises to do for a PA announcer specifically, or just somebody who's involved in public speaking in general?
It's very important. A lot of times there's a lot of alliteration in names, and you're saying the same consonant over and over, and each sport has a different type of name. In baseball, there's a lot of Hispanic names. In basketball, I have a lot of Middle European, guys from Georgia, not our Georgia over there. So there's different types. Soccer, it's always different. So being able to speak cleanly and plainly so people can understand you is very important. We've all, seen that joke, you go to the drive-through now, our job, when you cut it down to it, is to get information to people. Yes, there's the rah part of it, the entertainment part of it, but people want to know what's going on, who scored, what the problem is, if something's going on. All right, fans, we'll take care of this. It'll be down in 1 sec. You have to be able to speak plainly, clearly, and be understood. So all of those vocal exercises are very valuable.
Speaking to that and being able to pronounce things correctly, you told me earlier, one thing that really gets under your skin, a pet peeve of yours, are name pronunciations. I'm sure with you at the professional level, at the G League or the American Hockey League or even baseball, you've come across some pretty intricate names. Talk about those and what you have to do to make sure that you get it right, because there is no second chance.
No, I am very adamant about getting rosters as soon as possible. At BW, they may or may not have nicknamed me the Diva, because I'm like, can I get that roster? Can I get that roster? But it's for a good reason,
Absolutely.
I was doing a tournament at Baldwin Wallace. It was a women's basketball tournament, and I had a woman come up to me in between games. She's like, are you the PA announcer? I'm like, yeah. She goes, you are the only one that has ever said my daughter's name right, and that meant a lot, because it may be the only time that they're in that arena, or they're, that maybe that was the only time her daughter got in.
Absolutely.
You never know.
Yes.
And so that means a lot. And it means a lot at the professional levels as well. But sometimes it doesn't matter what the AD or whatever the other team sends over. I've resorted to just going up and asking players, hey,
yes,
is this right? There was a big 7-footer. I always tell this story. Um, and I forget what team he was on, but it was in the G League. And I always keep a bag of trolley gummy worms at the scorer's table. It's become sort of superstitious now. I always have to have them there.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm walking back to the scorer's table, and here's this guy, this 7-footer standing there, knuckles deep in my bag of gummy worms. And I'm like, hey, or wait, I should say, hey. And he goes, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, are these yours? And I'm like, well, yeah, but while you're here, I just want to, it's Georgi Bishanishvili, correct? And he's like, that is perfect, but you let me eat these. You call me whatever you want. But so, yeah, so there's a lot of time you just have to go right to the player and ask them, hey, I want to get this right. Since we talked last, I did a soccer game for Cleveland State University, and I went down to the field to get the referees' names.
Mhm.
And the referees looked at me and they're like, no one has ever done that. And I'm like, what? That's me. Sorry. I just want to make sure I get the names right.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So that's always been very important to me.
Absolutely, because you're right. You never know when that person gets in, and they may have heard their name mispronounced, or they'll tell someone, "Okay, that's close enough."
I
And
heard
we
someone tell me that one time. I'm like, no,
No,
this is
no.
your name.
Yeah,
Give
we
me
aren't
it
there.
correctly.
Yeah, we aren't there to get it close enough. We are there to get it exactly right, the way you expected it to be said.
Right.
Exactly. I completely sympathize with you, how that's if there's something that's number one for us, that's it. Get the names right. Rule number one, get the names right. Rule number two, never break rule number one. Now, all this kind of speaks to your preparation, Dave. What's a typical game day look like for you, regardless of the sport, from pregame prep to in-game performance?
Wow. It's a lot because I do a lot even day of game. And I can't say enough about the forms that you can get on publicaddressannouncer.org. When I first started, I was writing on pieces of paper and I was so disorganized that I couldn't remember, wait, who did I say made that tackle? Who did I? And I started using these forms, and so ahead of time, I have forms set up like for the G League. Once we get our roster set, and it changes, but for the most part, we have the same, for usually at least a couple weeks at a time. And I'll have all our players on the one side on the roster, and then I'll wait to see, okay, who are we playing? And then I'll put theirs in there, and I've got everything right there in front of me, ready to go. I like to get to the game early. That way, during shoot around, if there are any questions for the players or the coaches, hey, how do you say this? I can go up to them, and do that at the game, before they're in their game mode and they don't want to talk about it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Get to them before they get into their game mode, so we get what we need, but we're there to watch them, and they need to prepare. And there's certain things they need to do, and we need to get out of their hair.
Exactly. I want to be as least intrusive as possible. I'm like, let me just get this and I'm out of my way.
Exactly.
And I like the quiet of the, baseball. I love going to the field hours before gates, sitting out and on the outfield in the quiet, because I know it's hard to believe, but I lead a very loud life. So those
I can't imagine that.
Right? Those moments of quiet for me are very important. I enjoy those. I like to be in the arena. The building we play in, with the Charge is a 103-year-old building, Cleveland Public Hall. It's beautiful. To be in the space, be there, be ready to go. I loathe running in at the last second, sitting down. Okay, it's time to go. It's just not. I don't operate that well that way.
I hear you. I agree wholeheartedly. Now let's change up a little bit. Was there ever a moment where it hit you, Dave? This isn't just a side gig. Holy cow, I'm the public address announcer for the NBA G League Cleveland Charge.
I don't know that it's hit me yet. I think when people started, contacting me for jobs, I'm like, wait, me? I didn't go looking for these, these gigs that my name is out there. And I'm like, wow, that meant a lot. That first time that happened, that I didn't go looking for that job. It came looking for me. That I realized, yeah, this is, I am so blessed. You're right. I've had a full career as a police officer, but I am so blessed to have found a second career that I am so passionate about, that I love, that I think I'm okay at, you know,
Mhm.
but it's awesome.
And that others see that passion and preparation that you put into it that shows up on game day, and then they see that and they say, "I want that guy."
Right?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Mhm.
I'm
Now
right here.
working the
My name is Dave. Here's my no, sorry.
Now working the table at G League games or in the booth for American Hockey League games or the minor league baseball that you do,
Mhm.
besides your prep and that performance of the game, what goes on behind the scenes, either before or during a game? Some stories like that that the fans out there, because you do such a good job, they don't notice all the stuff that goes on, but all this other behind the scenes stuff that happens. Anything like that?
Oh, man, it's hard to say, you know, because it's become such a, oh, I wanna, you know, for lack of a better term, well-oiled machine.
Mhm.
Um, it's become kind of seamless, as far as, you know, between my producer and myself, you know, he's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, wait, we've gotta get this into the game," and I look over, he's like, "Alright," he turned his, "Okay, alright, we're gonna read this now, we're gonna go," you know, there's a lot that's going on that people don't see, you know, they hear me, you know, with it's funny because basketball is probably my favorite sport to announce,
Okay.
because you're right there on the court, there's
Yeah.
so much room for, um, improv, for, you know, coming up with this or coming up with that, and, you
Okay.
know, a nickname for this guy, Three Lie,
Okay.
instead of Eli or whatever, and
Mhm.
it's just a lot of fun, and you're right there, and the crowd is hanging on every bucket and every, it's even though I was awful at basketball, I couldn't play basketball to save my life. I say that all the time. That's why I announce basketball, because I can't play it. Um, whereas, I still play hockey and I love hockey, but hockey's
Oh,
a lot
wow.
different.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not one of those things where, as soon as they score, you're like, "Oh," you have to wait to see who
Mhm.
got the assists, and you have to wait for the official, and they're looking at things, and, and you're like jazzed up and want to do it, but you got to wait. And, so there's each one is so much different. So it's to say, what goes on behind the scenes that, people don't see. I mean, just mainly, the seamless, like, okay, we're getting ready for this video, be ready and go.
Mhm.
You're hearing this. There's not a whole lot to, you know, especially with basketball, because I'm right there out in the
Mhm.
open, with the fans, and they're all around, and, they see me, I'm excited, I scored, or they don't. I'm like, oh, so, I'm right there with them. But it's probably pretty open as far as basketball goes, as far as there's not a
Okay.
whole lot behind.
Okay. Okay. Well, now there's been players that you've announced that probably made it to the show, or they made it to the NBA or the National Hockey League. Any, I called that guy's name first moments for you
Well, right now with the Guardians in the playoffs,
in the playoffs?
uh,
Yeah.
CJ Kafis, actually, who is now up with the Guardians, was the first player that I had ever called, in baseball at high A, and
Okay.
now he's in the majors. Um,
Oh,
and that's
really? All the way from single A ball all the way to the majors.
Yeah,
Great for
yeah,
him.
he's
Wow.
there, yeah, and so that was pretty cool to see. With basketball, it's a little different because we have what are called two-way players that will play for the Cavs and for the G League, and so that's kinda, back and forth. That's just always exciting, but, like, when you see, because baseball, I'm a big fan of baseball, and when you see how hard it is and the amount of people that are trying to get to the majors, and you see the minor leagues, and you see the system and how it works and what's going on, and when you see that guy that actually makes it, it's an awesome feeling.
Oh, it has to be for him and for you.
Mhm.
Oh gosh, yes. Now, this will be easy to get this next question. Talk about if you could think of your best moment behind the mic, something most memorable, maybe one of those, I can't believe I just saw that moment.
Oh,
Any of
jeez.
those?
Um, wow, that's a tough one. There was probably, a charge game, last season where a guy tied the game, a three-quarter foot, three-quarter, uh court shot at the
Yeah.
last at the buzzer to tie the game, which was amazing. And at that point, I have no voice left. I've lost everything. And there's stuff like that. I'm trying to think of that one moment. How can I forget? Last summer, the Lake County Captains, they won the Midwestern League Championship on our field. So, that last out, and there it is. Place went nuts. All the whole team out on the field, the fireworks, people are going up, here we are, your 2024 Midwest champions. That was very cool. So that's something I won't forget.
Isn't something like that just so much fun to say?
It was amazing because I'm down, and I'll tell this story too. I was down on the field. Now, out there, I was up in the box the whole season. I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with the players that first year when I was at Lake County. And I'm down on the field, after the game, and everybody's just celebrating. We're taking pictures and this and that. And one of the assistant managers goes, "Wait, you're David?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, and he points up to the box. He's like, David. I'm like, "Yeah." And he gets everybody together because during the season, every time bases were loaded, my host, Grover, would yell, "Hey, David." And I'd be like, "There's captains everywhere." We did this whole big thing. You don't think anything of that. The players loved it. They all got together and I have this video. At some point I'll send it to you, but it's 18 seconds long. And the whole, they're sitting there with the championship trophy, and the whole team goes, "Hey, David." Hey, David! There's champions everywhere! There's champions! I'm not gonna lie, I got a little misty, because you don't think that the players pay attention to what's going on.
Right.
And they had a blast with it, and it was so exciting. That was my moment. I think right then is when I knew, this is I'm here.
Announcing the Game is a free resource to public address announcers that take you through how to take your skills to the next level. A simple click on the sport gives you free access to a video that goes over terminology and rules specific to a lot of sports. So take a look. See if we can help you improve your skills. Okay. Now, I almost hate to do this and ask this next question, but on the complete opposite end, what was your toughest, I hate to say worst moment, but the toughest moment behind the mic and how you bounce back from it?
I tell this story all the time, and this goes way back to that first time in college when I was announcing that first time. And now this was for Miami University hockey. Now, Miami, back then when I went, because I'm old, when I went to Miami, they were the Miami Redskins, and they changed to the Miami Redhawks. So, for years, it was, "Here come the Redskins," and then the music and, the hockey teams. Now I love hockey, and it was awesome. So here I am. It's my first time, and I am ready to go, and I am pumped up, and I am jazzed up, and here comes the music, lights come on, spotlight, and I go, "Here come the Redskin Hawks."
Oh.
Just like that. Redskin Hawks. And I was mortified. The crowd just started laughing. They loved it. The administration, not so much, but I mean, they realized I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where I'm like, "Are you kidding me? My first time, my biggest moment, and what did I do?" That's another thing of getting way too much into the moment that you're not present.
Yes.
And if I can say something to you, just make sure you're not so wrapped up in it that you're not present, because that happened.
Yes. Now, have you ever gone back to listen to your calls? A little self-critique. How do you handle that?
I have. I've Mainly if I do, like, a starting lineup, like, if I'm gonna do a starting lineup,
Mhm.
something new, if I wanna try different music or something, I'll video record it, or if we have a new player that and I'm trying to see because, trying to make every name sound cool is sometimes
Mhm.
hard.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I talked when I was at Miami, one of the players, he was from Thunder Bay, Ontario. That's fun to say. But
Mhm.
we had another guy, and I always prayed he wasn't in the starting lineup because he was from Ljubljana, Slovenia, which is really hard to make it sound cool. Um, so I will go back and I will listen. I'm like,
Mhm.
how can I make that better? How can I make it, hit more here or hit more there?
Yeah.
But that's usually what I use it for.
Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned mentors in your development, like Jason with in the American Hockey League and the Monsters. Now, let's flip the roles a little bit. You get to be the mentor. What advice would you give someone either just starting out in our field as a sports public address announcer, or maybe to a more seasoned, more experienced announcer, maybe something that they're overlooking that could be holding them back a little bit?
Be able to improv.
Mhm.
Be don't Scripts are important and what you have to say is important, but be able to pivot on a dime. I've worked with people and I've seen people that are so script dependent that you if you wanted to have a conversation with them, to lighten things up or something, there's a dead space and you want to get things moving, you can't because if it's not on the script, they don't know what to do. And and that was important when I got my job with Akron. I know um, a lot of people have great voices and can, read great stuff, but they had part of the audition was they showed a video of a mascot race, and they're like, "Okay, now narrate it." And, go. I didn't
Yeah.
hadn't seen it
Mhm.
before or anything like that, and, you just had to go, and it was a fork, a spoon or it was a spoon, a bag of chips, and a cup, it was like for recycling,
Okay.
and at some point I said, "Yeah, spoon, you're running like a fork." It was just stupid things like that,
Okay.
but being able to think off the cuff and be able to improvise is very important. Do the extra stuff, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Do the homework, you know? People think that, and I'm sure, you've been a PA announcer a long time. People think that, "Oh, you just show up and yell into a mic. That's what you do,
Mhm.
right?"
Yeah.
And there's so much more to it, as far as prepping with the names, so you don't,
Yes.
this guy never gets in, and this is the game he gets in, and then you have to know how to say that name right now.
Yes, because
Um,
if you don't do that prep, he will get in, and if it's a
absolutely.
basketball game, he will get 15 points. Yes.
Absolutely. So,
Yes.
do that extra homework,
Mhm.
ahead of time. It doesn't take that long. I obsess over it. That's just me. I'm not
Yeah.
saying you have to be obsessive, but do the extra. Go the extra mile, and it will be noticed by the people you work
Yes.
for, by the
Yes.
people you're talking to. It will
Mhm.
be noticed.
Yeah. I know when I taught at the college level, and I taught seniors ready to go out into the teaching field, I says, "Do the work that nobody sees you do." And you're talking about the same exact thing, the work that nobody sees us do, but it shows itself in the result of when we just get to stand behind the mic and scream behind the mic.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's what they see, but they don't realize that goes what into it. Now, Dave, listening to you talk for this last bit of time, it's it's very apparent to me that you just have a blast doing this. I mean, I can't see you having any more fun anywhere else. How important is that to enjoy what you're doing?
Oh, it's don't do it if you're not enjoying it, because that shows. You've all been somewhere, and either there's, the guy that's emceeing something that doesn't wanna be there or, I mean, even, the straight, "Now up to bat number 23, John Smith." You could tell, like, man, they can't wait till, the ninth inning. I tell people this all the time. They're like, "Man, you bring so much energy." I said, "Look, I'm having fun. I just want you to have fun with me. I hope you do." And I am. I'm having a blast with it. It's real because I hate to lose, you know. So that is and somebody said that to me because I would get real down after a game. I would get, really upset. And and someone said something to me and the higher ups, it was after a charge game. And they're like, Dave, you can't do anything about what's going on inside that triangle. You handle everything outside the triangle. You make sure that everybody else is having a good time. You did your job. You can't, don't let that. And I get that. But I am who I am. And if I'm not upset by a loss, then I won't be being who I am. And that's just me.
Yeah. That's how you have to be. Now, Dave, this has been a fantastic ride through your journey, hearing about your voice, your story, the insights that you've shared with us. So thank you very much for taking this time. We appreciate this so much.
Thank you so much for having me. When I was asked, I was like, it is such an honor to be here on your inaugural podcast. Episode 1. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tom. Thank you to Matt. Again, this is not solicited. Please, if you are a PA announcer and you're trying to figure out how to get things through a game, go look at the forums on the website. They are awesome. And oftentimes, if there's something you're looking for, you're not quite sure what you need, or you have an idea, whatever, reach out to Matt. There's a G League form, in-game form on the website that Matt made for me when I got my gig, because I said, well, it's not regular basketball. I kind of need this. I kind of need that. It's invaluable to me. I would not know what to do without those forms.
Well,
so they are, again, totally unsolicited. He didn't ask me to say that. Yeah. I just love those forms, and I will tell anybody, and I always do. But it's been so much fun. I really appreciate you having me on, and the fact that I was on before Alan Roach. I finally beat him to something.
Well, good for you. So for all of our listeners and viewers out there, be sure to check out publicaddressannouncer.org. Check out the forums Dave was talking about and the rest of the information that's on there, and it's all free of charge. It won't cost you a penny. And you maybe even check out a few of those tongue twisters we talked about. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode today, folks, don't forget, log in, leave a review for us, and then share us with a friend, somebody else who may want to hear about that voice behind the game. So until next time, I'm Tom Winicky, and I can't wait to hear you on the mic.